I'm not going to welcome you because there's someone going to do that officially for a minute. My name's Pete Kondoff, and it's wonderful that you've come out on a day like this. It is. Now look, the Historic Society, and we consider everybody as being a part of it, is doing a job, and we need your help. Now when you come in, there's a little yellow slip of paper. There's going to be a draw after, and they're going to draw your name out of it, but we've got another reason for that. We want your name and address and telephone number as well. So if you didn't fill this out, will you please go out and get one of these slips of paper, and you might win a $40 ticket for the draw, which is going to be for the banquet that we're going to be holding. So please, make sure you get one of these tickets and fill it out. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Mary Constantine. I'll be your MC today. I've never done this before, so bear with me. A lot of stuttering. I'd like to first thank everyone for coming out in this inclement weather. I'm really happy that you made the effort, and I think it's really important that everybody showed up for such an important lecture. Anyway, to begin, I'd just like to mention that today we'll be focusing on the issue of human rights. And just to put some perspective on this subject, I would like to start with how human rights became formalized. On October 24, 1945, 50 nations signed the Charter of the United Nations. They were the first UN members, and since then, over 100 nations have joined. The United Nations is an organization that works for world peace and security and the betterment of humanity. In 1946, the United Nations set up the Commission on Human Rights as part of their Economic and Social Council. The Council wrote the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. This declaration set forth basic civil, economic, political, and social freedoms for every person. This declaration states that all persons are born free and equal in dignity and rights. The declaration is meant to serve as a common standard of achievement for people of all nations. There were treaties signed to deal with racial discrimination, slavery, the rights of refugees, and the crimes of genocide, which is the systematic extermination of a culture, religious, or national group. This was approved in 1948 by all the members of the General Assembly. In that same year, the United Nations drew up an international convention that made genocide a crime. The basic human rights are in place for each individual, and every democratic government has been given a standard of achievement using the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. Governments enforce them, as well as independent organizations such as Amnesty International. Amnesty International is a worldwide human rights organization, and today we are very happy to have with us Mr. Michael Craig. A few brief words about Mr. Craig. He's been an active member for Amnesty for about 4 years. He produces communication videos for nonprofit organizations. He also chairs group number 164, which holds open meetings once a month at Eastminster Church in the Riverdale, Cabbagetown district. Please help me welcome Mr. Craig.
Thank you, Mary. And I'd also like to thank Virginia and Alex and Peter and Chris and all the rest of the people who have worked so hard, obviously, to get such an extraordinary number of people out here on such a miserable day. Thank you. Thank you for inviting me. And thank you for making human rights a high priority in your community. To my mind, to my heart, nothing is of greater importance. You can't have democracy without human rights. You can't have betterment of people's standard of living without human rights. It's absolutely central. I'd like to tell you today a bit about Amnesty International. I could easily spend an hour and a half. It's a very complex organization. But in fact, I have about 20 minutes, and I'd like to basically explain what amnesty is, how it works, and then briefly talk about priests in the context of human rights, some of which many of you will know much more about than I do. I have so many props here that I'll probably spend at least 15 minutes of my 20 trying to find things. But first of all, I would like to state for you, in fact, read for you the mandate of Amnesty International. It's extremely important to understand what the organization is all about, what it seeks to achieve. Specifically, Amnesty seeks the release of prisoners of conscience. These are people detained anywhere for their beliefs, color, sex, ethnic origin, language, or religion, who have not used or advocated violence. And to that list, I can add sexual orientation, because within the past year, Amnesty has decided that people who are imprisoned because of their sexual orientation will also receive Amnesty's help. Amnesty also works for fair and prompt trials for all political prisoners and on behalf of such people detained without charge or trial. This is not just political prisoners, not just prisoners of conscience, but anyone. And finally, Amnesty opposes the death penalty and torture or other cruel, inhuman, or degrading treatment or punishment of all prisoners without reservation. In a way, it's a very simple and clear mandate, but it always requires some elaboration, and in fact, we are, as an organization, always examining it carefully, formally and informally. I think it's first extremely important to understand that Amnesty takes up as prisoners of conscience only the cases of people who have not used or advocated violence. For example, in South Africa, Steve Biko, a well-known activist who was in fact murdered by the police authorities some years ago, was a prisoner of conscience because he had never used or advocated violence. But Nelson Mandela, on the other hand, who has certainly received a lot of attention from Amnesty International, was never a prisoner of conscience because he had advocated violence early in his career. It's also, I think, important to understand that Amnesty is a very independent and impartial organization. It's been central to our development, particularly important when governments of the right have criticized us, pilloried us as communist front, or the former communist governments of the Eastern Bloc have criticized us as a front for the Americans, fascist lackeys. Amnesty's been called all sorts of unpleasant things by the opponents of human rights. But in fact, Amnesty is neither left nor right, neither capitalist nor socialist. Amnesty is really quite resolutely impartial. And part of that impartiality is the fact that we have no connections, no formal connections with any government. We do not receive any funding from any government, because it's only by the preservation of this impartiality and independence that Amnesty can carry on its investigations and criticize governments, virtually every government in the world, with no sense that there's legitimacy to claims that Amnesty is impartial, or is partial rather. Being asked to speak into the microphone. There's a limit here, I guess, on the degree of the amplification. I hope that's a little better if I'm right on top of it like a rock singer. Well, that tells you what Amnesty seeks to do. Now, a bit about how we do it. Essentially, the most important element of Amnesty's work is you folks out there. People like you who are parts of groups like my group 164 in the Riverdale and Cabbagetown area in the heart of Greek Toronto. People come to meetings, inform themselves about human rights situations in various countries, and write letters. Hundreds of letters, tens of thousands of letters. I would venture to guess, a wild guess, but probably not that inaccurate, that at least 1 million letters have been written, for example, on behalf of Aung San Suu Kyi, the woman who is still under house arrest in Burma, Myanmar, even though, as you no doubt know, even though she won an election in 1990 when she was still under house arrest, and should be, in fact, the leader of that country. Aung San Suu Kyi won the Nobel Peace Prize in 1991, and most recently you may have read within the last week or two that a group of Nobel Peace Prize winners, including Amnesty International, went to that part of the world, actually to Thailand, because the Myanmar authorities would not let them into the country, and protested the continuing house arrest of Aung San Suu Kyi. But in any case, as part of that campaign, which has been a central one for Amnesty, I'm sure at least 1 million letters have been written, and this Christmas, tens of thousands of Christmas cards, including at least one that I wrote. That's the way we work with letters. But it's also important to know that Amnesty works at the international level with a high degree of research and concerted, organized activity. This takes place through what we call the International Secretariat in London, England. There are around 300 people who work at the IS. They are researchers and specialists in every country, in every part of the world. And they are the people who assemble the reports, the famous accurate reports of Amnesty that provide a great deal of specific detail and give us, the local activists, the background material we need in order to act. So Amnesty has workers in London who will often travel to parts of the world, like Greece, in order to carry out their investigations. In some countries, like Greece, they are welcomed and there is a degree of cooperation. In other countries, like Myanmar, there is no cooperation whatsoever. There is pure antipathy. But nothing stops Amnesty. We have a report that we put out every year. And I bring you here the 1992 report, which primarily reports on the year 1991, of course. This report has approximately 2 to 3 page synopses on 146 countries, certainly including Canada. Amnesty does not just look at third world countries or underdeveloped countries. It also looks at the countries of the Western world and is highly critical. In addition to local groups writing letters, Amnesty also organizes major campaigns that often have a geographic focus, or perhaps focus on a particular issue. Two that perhaps will exemplify this are the campaign against torture. It's a campaign, an effort that is ongoing, has been for quite a number of years now, and there are cells of Amnesty throughout the world who write letters and carry out other kinds of actions to fight the torture that many governments regularly, well over 50 governments in the world, I understand, regularly use torture as a policy to subjugate, to harass their citizens. And Amnesty is fighting this every day of the week through the campaign against torture. In addition, in order to focus attention on particular regions, we have regional action networks. Greece is part of the Western Europe Regional Action Network. So on quite a regular basis, information comes out, is disseminated through people around the world who are coordinators for this network, and and then distributed to groups like mine for action. So it's highly organized, highly structured, paper-heavy organization, and also perhaps legal-heavy, because naturally it is dealing with the laws of individual countries, and as Mary pointed out, the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, and other international documents that commit governments to treating their subjects, their people fairly, decently, and humanely. Another kind of campaign that Amnesty gets involved in will have a shorter time span, and this pamphlet here, called A Demand for Change, Ending 500 Years of Abuse, is one of the main pamphlets that we are using for the Indigenous Peoples Campaign of the Americas, in a sense to commemorate the 500th anniversary of Columbus so-called discovering America, a point which is of course disputed widely now. In any case, in order to commemorate the 500th anniversary, we have created a campaign to protest the inhumane treatment and very often the brutal treatment of indigenous peoples in countries around the Western Hemisphere, North and South America and Central America. I don't suppose it will come as much of a shock to you, and perhaps it will help to make my remarks a little closer to the bone if I point out that today in Honduras, in Guatemala, in El Salvador, people are still being disappeared, plucked from their homes or off the streets, never to be seen again. They're being murdered by police, by military authorities, often acting at the behest of the leaders of the government, the leaders of the military. They're being murdered, they're being tortured brutally. And a great many of these people are indigenous peoples who are simply trying to achieve for their people some measure of security, physical security, and the basic necessities of life. It's very appropriate that Roberto Menchu Tum, a Guatemalan Quiche Indian, was the 1992 recipient of the Nobel Peace Prize. She personally epitomizes the horrors that indigenous people have suffered over the past couple of decades in some countries, including Guatemala. Her brother, her mother, and her father, and most of her friends were murdered by the Guatemalan military authorities. So, it's not just an abstract concept, it's real people with real blood, and that blood is flowing. I'd like now to briefly turn to Greece, and I hope that others who speak will be able to fill in some of my gaps. By no means am I an expert, but I've done a bit of reading on the subject since being asked to speak here. I think perhaps what interested me most greatly was looking at the 1972 report from Amnesty International on the human rights situation in Greece, and then looking at subsequent reports. The 1972 report specified that in Greece there were gross violations of human rights and fundamental freedoms. This is documented in some degree by Amnesty, but for one example, 6 lawyers were detained by police in Athens in March in 1972, I guess it was, in Athens, and held incommunicado for many weeks. By the 1977 report, documenting the human rights situation in 1976, after a democratic government had been reestablished in Greece, the situation had changed remarkably. The number of gross human rights violations against people simply for speaking their mind had been reduced very, very substantially. Based on that, I've always considered Greece to be one of the great human rights victories of the past couple of decades. Not that the situation is perfect today, but that certainly the thousands of human rights violations, the most serious human rights violations, murders, have largely ceased and did cease between 1972 and 1976. At the same time, one of the ongoing complaints that Amnesty has with Greece pertaining to the jailing of conscientious objectors, particularly Jehovah's Witnesses, who, because of their religion, have said that they are not prepared to serve in the military. That is represented as an issue with about 400 people detained and jailed for an average of 4.5 years. First comes up, as I say, in 1976, and that continues to be an issue today. Although the good news on that subject, I guess, comes in two ways. One is that the jail sentences have been significantly reduced, and the harassment of Jehovah's Witnesses who have sought not to participate in the military has been significantly reduced. But by the end of 1991, and moving into 1992, the Greek government had indicated that it plans to, I'm not sure if there's been any movement on this since, but it plans to institute alternatives to military participation, to military training. In other words, people can take a civilian job specified by the government instead of being inducted into the army. That would be a great move in the right direction, and one that Amnesty has been fighting for 20 years now. The 1991-92 report indicates that the human rights situation in Greece is by no means perfect. However, possibly a very positive and encouraging sign is that Greece ratified in 1991 the European Convention for the Prevention of Torture and Inhuman or Degrading Treatment or Punishment. Unfortunately, though they ratified that agreement, the Anti-Torture Convention, torture appears to be still quite prevalent, particularly in police stations and military areas where criminal suspects are being interrogated. It does not appear, from my reading of the background material, that torture is being widely used against political dissidents. There's certainly been roughed up on many an occasion, but it's not a standard policy. But it would appear that the use of torture is quite widespread in the interrogation of criminal suspects, particularly drug users and drug dealers. Amnesty in 1992 published this booklet called Torture and Ill Treatment, and it details at substantial length the kinds of torture that takes place, which often includes beatings and kickings, electric shocks, and burns to the soles of the feet and of the genitals. It's not a pretty story. And it's an issue that Amnesty is looking into on a regular basis. See, I said I'd get confused and this stuff would start to get lost on me. I'm going to leave it to Trian to talk more about some of the specific cases that are ongoing at the present time, affecting individuals and particularly the Macedonian community. But let me make it clear that in many of these cases, Amnesty has been very active, quite involved in demanding that the government authorities release people who have been imprisoned solely for expressing their views non-violently. This other report I have before me is called Violations of the Right to Freedom of Expression, Further Cases of Concern. This is in fact from January of this year, just last month, and it's a follow-up on a longer report from November of 1992. There are a number of cases, and just as an example, I'll mention one which is very current. A young man, a 17-year-old, Mikhail Papadakis, was at a demonstration on Macedonia. He handed a leaflet to a civilian who was present at the demonstration together with a friend who was a police officer. The leaflet bore the words, "Don't be consumed by nationalism. Alexander the Great, war criminal. Macedonia belongs to its people. There are no races. We are all of mixed descent." You can agree or disagree with that. Amnesty does neither. Amnesty stays impartial with regard to the nature of the statement, but the important thing for us is that there was nothing in this statement and other statements of Macedonian nationalists that has advocated violence. And for that reason, we feel these people have every right in the world to make these statements publicly. In any case, this young man, just a 17-year-old high school student, was pursued through the crowd. The police officer said that he had with him an iron bar as a weapon, and eventually when he was apprehended and this came to court, he was accused of disseminating information. I'll find the exact words here. Information that said, Macedonia is not in danger from the people of Skopje, but is certainly in danger from those governing us. And at his trial, he was convicted of disseminating information injurious to the public and of carrying a concealed weapon, even though there was nothing brought forward at the trial to indicate that he had any such alleged weapon. He has been released pending appeal, and that case has not yet come back before the courts, along with quite a number of other cases of people who have been recently imprisoned for speaking out. As I understand it, in fact, a number of these cases are on hold at the present time because of a lawyer strike. But Amnesty is looking into all of them, is following them all very closely, and is in each case demanding that the Greek government release without any penalties the people who have been arrested, who are being detained simply for speaking out. So, to sum it up, Greece has been a country near and dear to my heart as somebody who lived in Riverdale for 20-odd years, and also near to my heart because of the significant improvement in the political climate and in the human rights situation over the years. But today, I'm increasingly alarmed as I read the reports coming out of Greece. The tolerance of dissent seems to be taking a nosedive. The government is quite intolerant of anyone who advocates the acceptance of the reality of Slav Macedonia. Amnesty, as I say, has to be very careful not to take sides on an issue like that, but nonetheless, we speak out boldly and very strongly that people have a right to express their political views, and the government has no right to harass them when they do. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Michael. Now, briefly, a few words. The Macedonian people, through their struggles and hardships, have endured before the eyes of the world Our enemies wish us to remain as peaceful as sheep, to remain silent, and in due course to have the question of Macedonia disappear. The Macedonian people, whose roots originated from the land, these aboriginals, with a separate ethnicity, with centuries of history, had their own state. They endured the invasions of Goths, Huns, Vikings, Mongols, as well as many others. Their lands were occupied during the Roman Empire, the Byzantine Empire, and the Ottoman Empire. However, during the 5 centuries of Turkish rule, no one managed to change the name, nor its people. The Macedonians remained and survived with their name, dignity, and territory. But the Macedonian question is still unanswered. Getting emotional. The major powers in Europe, especially France and Great Britain, divided Macedonia, changed its borders by partitioning it between 4 Balkan states, Albania, Greece, Bulgaria, and Serbia. We are still living with the consequences of that decision today. The partition of Macedonia, as written in the Treaty of Bucharest on August 10, 1913, is the beginning of the greatest injustice to the Macedonian people. In Albania, Bulgaria, Greece, and Serbia, the Macedonians were, and still are, persecuted, jailed, assimilated, forced to immigrate, killed, denationalized, their language forbidden, and churches destroyed. Today, the same Europe, the same powers under pressure from one member, Greece, is trying to change the name of the Macedonian and the Macedonian people. As our main guest speaker, I would like to introduce the President, since 1987, of the Macedonian Canadian Human Rights Committee, Mr. Trian, Dimitriou.
It's a pleasure to see all of you here today. And thank you very much, Mary, for the nice words. And thank you, Mr. Craig, for enlightening us on a lot of points there in regards to the human rights. In regards to the violations by the Greek state. I agree with you up to a point on that there are some improvements, subtle improvements in Greece, provided though you are not an ethnic Macedonian. If you're an ethnic Macedonian, it's a different story altogether. I would like to thank the executive and the members of the Canadian Macedonian Place Historical Society for giving me this opportunity to share with you some of the activities that our committee has done over the years. The Macedonian Canadian Human Rights Committee is a Macedonian community organization that deals in the field of human rights. In other words, we're here to protect the rights and to monitor the violations against Macedonians in our homeland in Macedonia, as well as here in Canada. Because, believe me, there's a lot of violations against us Macedonians here in Canada. And most of those violations, believe me, they're exported here to Canada from Greece directly, guided and funded by Athens. And I would like to mention to you 2 specific incidents. The incident on Danforth when we tried to lay the wreath, the statue of Alexander, and the latest one right here at Mel Lastman Square. The Greek community, members of the Greek community, an extremist element of that Greek community, is actually inflamed by different means, right directly from Athens through their radio, through their cable radio stations, and so on, by certain segments, even leaders of the Greek community, to do what they did to us here. That is exactly what they're doing. That is unacceptable here in Canada. The mayor of North York, Mel Lastman, was accurate when he said, this is not the Canadian way. We have every right to do that. That's part of the free expression, and we were prevented to do that, even though we had a legal permit to do it. So the committee is actually trying to acquaint the Macedonian community with these issues. And just like Mr. Craig mentioned earlier, we're trying to get as many people to write to their elected representatives, to their MPs, and to inform the authorities every time an incident takes place of this nature. That's what the committee is all about. Now, the Macedonian Canadian Human Rights Committee is a non-profit organization. We don't, we're against violence completely. We're not a separatist organization because we've been accused by the Greeks as being separatist in a sense that when we try to help our people over there, because don't forget, every one of us has members of our extended family still living in Greece, in Macedonia. And when those people are oppressed and we try to raise our voice, we're called traitors, we're called names that you never heard of. If anybody of you speaks or reads the Greek language, you know the terminology is being used against us. You know very well. They never called us Macedonians, first of all. Why? The reason is, what they're aiming at is the cultural genocide of our ethnic identity. We're not Greeks. Macedonians are not Greeks. The Greeks are Greeks. We have no problem with that. But also, we demand the same recognition as they enjoy. In other words, equality. The Macedonian Canadian Human Rights Committee has been involved in a number of occasions, together with chapters of the Macedonian human rights movement, because we are a part of a larger movement that we have chapters around the world in other countries as well. Australia, for example, has 5 chapters. We have a group established now in the States and in Western Europe. And not to forget that we also have the Central Organizational Committee of Macedonian Human Rights based in Salonika, Greece. Also the OMO-Ilinden, that is Obedineta Makedonska Organizacija, United Macedonian Organization, Ilinden, in the Pirin area of Macedonia, which is a part of Macedonia in Bulgaria. Also, there is 2 chapters established in Albania, where Macedonians live, in the district of Mala Prespa and also in the district of Golopardo. So what we are really trying to do here is working on 2 fronts, because we feel that if our people gain their rights in those countries where their rights are violated, where they're trying to be assimilated by force, where they are harassed on a daily basis, where their identity is denied, where they don't enjoy any religious rights whatsoever, we feel that once they gain those rights over there, that propaganda that's been exported here to Canada will cease also. That's the key. So in order to achieve our goal We have been attending in the last few years a number of international conferences in a number of different countries. These conferences are of the CSC, that is the Security and Cooperation in Europe. These countries are where actually, because right now there is no Eastern Bloc, they were formed precisely for these reasons, in order for both blocs to be able to carry on a dialogue and to try to solve problems that were of a humanitarian nature, problems that involve human rights and violations of those human rights. The first conference was in 1975 in Helsinki, Finland. That's where the Helsinki Final Act was produced by that conference. And that, we feel today, that played a very important role. That is contributed in many ways, actually, for the collapse of the Cold War. These conferences have continued over the years. And the existence of our committee, actually, since 1986, because that's when the committee was formed, we have sent a number of delegations to these conferences to raise the issue of the violations of human rights of the Macedonians in our homeland. What I mean by homeland is I include all parts of partitioned Macedonia, because Macedonians don't come from Mars. They come from Macedonia. And Macedonia is a large area which comprises parts of Greece, parts of the Republic of Macedonia today, parts of Bulgaria, and a small section in Albania. This is where Macedonians live. Macedonians also live outside of that territory, such as in many areas of Bulgaria, in many areas of Albania. There are Macedonians that live also in a number of cities in Greece proper, not just in the territory of Macedonia. Better not forget that. Also, the communities in the diaspora, which many of us know the reasons why we settled in the other countries. Oppression, the political oppression against the Macedonians. The attempt to annihilate us as a people, as a distinct ethnic or nationality, where our culture is being falsified and usurped and used and presented as something which is not, either presented as Bulgarian or presented as Greek, presented as something else, but not Macedonian. Why? Why is this done? The reason they do it is to wipe us out. In Greece, in the 20s, all the toponyms were changed. They were all Hellenized. They were given Greek names. Our personal names were changed by force. They never asked the Macedonian people whether they wanted to do that. Why? The reason was, so there is no symbol, no trace of us as a people. And now, with the issue of the recognition of Macedonia coming out at the United Nations, or where the Republic of Macedonia, one part of that historic area of Macedonia, that managed to gain its independence from former Yugoslavia. As you can see today, there is all kinds of attempts trying to block the recognition of that state by demands to change its name. If they succeed to do that, that means they succeed to complete the forced assimilation and a genocide of a people. Because if we're not Macedonians, if Macedonians as a national, distinct nationality doesn't exist anymore,
then we're finished. There'll be no Macedonians. That is the reason why. And the reason is also that there is a Macedonian national minority that lives within the borders of Greece, in Aegean Macedonia. If Greece succeeds to block the name of the Republic of Macedonia, by the stroke of that pen, the rights and the existence of that national minority in Greece is over. It's finished. That is the reason why they're doing it. And well, if they succeed there, that is exactly what they're going to do here in Canada as well. Because we cannot identify with the national group that exists in our homeland. If there is no Macedonians in our homeland, how can we be here? And they're working at this, spending millions upon millions of dollars to do it, in a very sleek campaign. Even though most of us know the truth, that they're mostly lies. We know what they're talking, that Tito gave the name to the Republic of Macedonia. Isn't that ridiculous? That's why I would like to show you some slides that you can figure it out for yourselves, because some of these maps are very old. And when they say that Macedonia should change its name, a territory that's been there for thousands of years, a territory that has played, and a people that have played such an important civilizing role of world magnitude. It's ridiculous. It's a crime. And we, as a people, as Macedonians, I don't think we should allow this to go any further. I would like some of the color slides, please. Well, these things do happen, I suppose. As you can see in the upper left corner, it says Macedonia. This is the first map of Ptolemy, and it was printed in Bologna, Italy in 1477. This is considered as one of the oldest maps ever printed. As you can see, it's the same territory that is known as Macedonia today. The next, there is. No, it's not. Take a look at this. This is also printed in 1589. The third map. There's another one, printed in Amsterdam in 1647. It says Macedonia, right there. Next. Again, same general area there on the left upper area. This was printed in Rome in 1689. Next, please. This one here from 1750, printed in Paris. Next. This one in 1791, printed in Vienna. This one here, which is much more what we know as the homeland of the Macedonian people, was printed in Paris in 1885. And this one, printed in St. Petersburg, Russia in 1913. The next one is from the 1920s and 30s and printed in Leipzig, Germany. This map here is refers to the language. As you can see, where Macedonian was spoken, the green area, which is precisely what Macedonia is. The pink area to the south, they didn't speak Macedonian there. You can answer that for yourselves. Next one, please. This here, map at the lower, the red one, it shows how Macedonia was partitioned in 1913 by the Bucharest Treaty. And after the partition of Macedonia, the Macedonians found themselves a national minority in those 3 or 4 countries, even though they comprised the majority of the people in Macedonia. Because Macedonia, for a long, long time, ever since the ancient kingdom, later on, it was occupied by Rome. Later it became part of the Eastern Roman Empire, which today we know as the Byzantine Empire. And then later on the Ottoman Empire. But always Macedonia was an entity within larger empires. These empires are multinational and multilingual empires. They were not like we understand a nation state today. So when the Macedonians found themselves partitioned this way, they did not want to refer to the territory as Greek Macedonia or Bulgarian Macedonia or Serbian Macedonia. This is why they started using a new terminology. So then they called the part that is in the territory of Greece Aegean Macedonia. The one that was in Serbia, they call it Vardar Macedonia because of the river that was running through. The part that was in Bulgaria was known as the Pirin part of Macedonia because of the mountain that is Pirin Mountains in that area. We come to the issue of the language. As you can see that the modern Macedonian language belongs into the family of the Slavic languages. Is not Greek. What I'm saying here is because you'll see a lot of Greek publications referring to the Macedonian language as being a dialect. A dialect of what language? Certainly not of Greek. Now you'll be wondering, I guess, I'm here to talk about human rights, and why am I showing these things? Because I'd like to give you a brief overview of what is really said today. In order to understand the issue, we have to know these facts. Otherwise, we can't continue. Because the Macedonian question is very complex. The Macedonian facts are there for anyone to find, but so many untruths have been said about Macedonia and Macedonian people that you have to dig very deep, very deep, because the lies are continuing even today. So when we're talking about a Macedonian people, we refer to those Macedonians that existed there for centuries. They mingle there for centuries. And anybody that says that the Macedonians today, every one of us, are direct descendants from Alexander the Great, they better take another look at our history. Just like saying Canada, the population in Canada today is the same as when Columbus discover or whatever, whether Europeans came to America. That's not a fact. And when we're talking about Macedonians here, we're not talking about a race. We're talking about an ethnicity, an ethno-cultural group of people. There is no such thing as a pure nationality in Europe. But we are all those things. We're part of the ancients. We're part of the settlers during the Roman period of time. We're part of the later Slavic tribes that settled not in Macedonia alone, but all the way down to the Peloponnese and to the islands of Greece. That's what we are. There's nothing to be ashamed about that fact. But we mingle, we develop, and we developed as a people, we developed our own identity. Because we lived in that land. So actually, that's what the Macedonian people are. The Greeks today are saying that the Macedonians are Greek. Then if that is the case, how come they don't allow the Macedonians to declare themselves in the census what they are? Because it's the only country in Europe today that demands and claims in these international conferences that Greece is a homogeneous state. There is only Greeks living in Greece. It's just like going out there on the street and seeing no other car except Volkswagens. That's ridiculous. What you see up there is the manifesto that was produced by the Central Organizational Committee of the Macedonian Human Rights Movement in Greece. As you can see, the Macedonians don't demand any separatism in there. They want their rights to be respected. They want to be able to develop their culture, to speak their language. They want to be able to identify as such. They want to be able to name their children and give them Macedonian names, which the Greek church today does not allow. Why? Because the Greek church, don't forget in Greece, is a state religion. A state religion. That is the vehicle that the government is using of assimilating our people. You cannot name your child and give him a Macedonian name. You can't form Macedonian congregations, even though we have certain customs that are different from what the Greeks are. They're not allowed. That is how it's controlled, by controlling the church, making it a state religion. The manifesto was produced in 1984, and shortly after that, in 1986, the PASOK government of Andreas Papandreou, who masqueraded outside of Greece as being a socialist party and a socialist government, they actually brought very oppressive measures against the Macedonians. They were the first ones, because we're not talking about the dictatorship that preceded earlier. That was a dictatorship, everybody suffered. But when you go and say that you have democratic elections, and you're a democratic government, and you take actions against the national minority, such as the Macedonians, when some Macedonians were studying and got their diplomas in the University of Skopje, they don't recognize those diplomas. When Macedonians that live outside of Greece are prevented to return, such as the refugee children of Aegean Macedonia, a large group of children that found themselves in the socialist countries, about 30,000 of them. They were from 4 to about 14. And now, today, they don't allow them because in Greece they passed a law which is known as 1540 that says that those that are not Greeks by birth, they have no right to return. And those that want to return, they have to make a written declaration that they're of Greek origin. Isn't that racism? If that's not racism, what is? Our people in Greece are prevented to have their associations, cultural associations, or even human rights organizations registered. In the town in Greek known as Florina, in Macedonian known as Lerin, a number of our people tried to organize a cultural association. And they were never registered. They went to court 3 times. They appealed the case at Salonika, and right now it's at the Supreme Court. I doubt it very much whether they're going to be recognized. The violations in Greece are different than, say, Latin America. There are still violations just the same. Because the Greek state, even though they don't use the police openly to oppress our people or to torture them, they do it conveniently in a different way. They have ultra-nationalist organizations. And while the authorities are looking the other way, these are the people that terrorize anybody that raises their voice to demand rights. There is an economic oppression, for example. You have a nightclub, we'll say, and you try to promote Macedonian culture, where you can play Macedonian music and dance. Well, let me tell you, they'll never renew your license. This is how it's done. If you have another business and you stand up and you demand rights, you put your name to a petition, they will definitely approach your customers and intimidate your customers. So they stifle you. This is how it's done in Greece. Some of the issues that we have been trying to acquaint the decision makers and these international conferences. We got them here listed, and I would like to mention some of them. For Greece, for example, the Macedonians are barred from using the word Macedonian to denote their distinct ethno-cultural identity, the expression of which is considered an anti-state act. Don't get confused, for example, when they say, I am a Macedonian, but when you really try to corner them, say, do you mean that your national consciousness is Macedonian? They'll say, no, 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 I'm Greek. There is the difference. What they really mean is that somebody that settled there since the fiasco of Greece in 1922 in Asia Minor, when they lost the war, and they uprooted all our Muslim brothers and they sent them back into Turkey, and they brought thousands upon thousands of others, most of them Greek-speaking, and they settled them on our confiscated land and our confiscated properties. Today, just because they're of Greek origin, you know, they're not ethnic Macedonians. We know that. But this is what exactly is really happening over there today. That is misleading. They don't have to say that. They're Greeks. We know that. They know that. But this is how the propaganda is working against our identity. The next item here is Macedonians are prohibited from officially using their Macedonian personal names. Hellenized names have been imposed since this part of Macedonia was annexed by Greece in 1913. In addition, Macedonian toponyms of villages, towns, rivers, mountains, geographical regions were Hellenized by virtue of an edict proclaimed in the Greek government gazette in February of 1927, and thus are unable to be used officially. In other words, most of the Macedonians here in Canada today, they have Greek-sounding names. That is the reason why they do. Now you'll say, once you immigrated and came to Canada, how come you didn't change your name and adopt your old family name? It's not as simple as that, let me tell you. Once you did that, first of all, you'll never be able to return back for a visit, 1. 2, you'll never be able to claim any property. They'll persecute your relatives there. And on the top of that, you won't even be able to get a birth certificate to get your pension. Never mind that you have whatever you have, if you have a diploma or anything else that you have to try to prove over and over and over again. This is how the problem is applied. This is how the oppression is applied. For many years, the Greek state worked in a different way. When we started immigrating, for example, if the son managed to come to Canada and he wanted to bring his parents naturally were classified as communists. In order to immigrate, you need papers from the police. The Canadian police looks at them, no way. A red coming to Canada? No way. This is how they classify them. They didn't mark down, they did this because he was Macedonian. No, that would be too simple. But they wanted to make it very difficult. So in other words, economically, they tried to destroy us that way by preventing family reunification. It's a shame what's happening. It's a shame. Because when we're talking about the birthplace of democracy, this is how Greece tries to portray itself, birthplace of democracy. This type of action against their minorities is certainly not democratic. And the next one, Macedonians are effectively denied freedom of religion, as the Macedonian Orthodox Church is banned from operating within Greece's borders. The Macedonian language is not recognized by the Greek state, such that it, along with Macedonian history and culture, is not taught at any level of the Greek educational system. Just like I mentioned earlier, they refer to our Macedonian language as that gypsy, Skopjani, whatever it is. But they'll refer to it by any name except what it really is, Macedonian. And that's what it is, because that's what we are. Another thing here is Macedonians are discriminated against in the field of employment, education, culture, and political life, even where they consciously adopt the dominant Greek culture and deny their national identity. In other words, even those, they cannot attain high positions because they're not trusted. The political and constitutional rights of Macedonians are highly circumscribed. The formation of parties, interest groups, organizations, and lobbies which promote Macedonian human rights, whilst constitutional guaranteed, is in practice barred by the atmosphere of terror and intimidation which surrounds the expression and circulation of Macedonian ethnicity. In the field of culture, the expression of Macedonian folklore, art, literature, theater, craft, song, and dance is effectively banned, as is the promulgation of achievements in these fields by Macedonians in the Republic of Macedonia. And in many cases, our rich Macedonian folklore is being falsified. Falsified, they'll use the music, but they never use the lyrics in our folklore. They will change the costumes. They will change the color. They will change the decoration. If you did that, that's not preserving the heritage. It's falsifying it and presenting it as Greek. And what they're saying that we're misusing, we are stealing symbols. They better look at themselves again. Macedonians living abroad, like ourselves here, who openly identify as such and are active in their communities, especially former partisans, child refugees, and the children of both, are routinely denied entry to Greece so that they will not hinder the process of denationalization. That is precisely why they're doing it. They don't want the contacts. On February 1682, a highly confidential report prepared at the request of the security branch of the Greek police contained a highly controversial recommendations for strategies to deal with the Macedonian problem. I have a copy of this. This is a secret police document. It's about 16 pages long, and it gives you all the details and the recommendations, what they're doing. All this, by the way, it's implemented today. It's all in effect. In one case, for example, right in there, it states that civic officials, including military men and police, are given financial or property grants to marry Macedonian women. And you know the reason why they would do that. On 28 December 82, the Greek Parliament passed law 1068/41, which allows only political emigrants who are Greeks by birth or ethnic Greeks to repatriate to Greece. In 1983, the Greek government unilaterally decided to no longer recognize degrees obtained at institutions of higher learning in the then Socialist Republic of Macedonia on the grounds that the Macedonian language is not internationally recognized. But those Greek citizens that study in Slovenia, which the number of Slovenian speakers is even smaller than Macedonian, they're not denied that right. So obviously you see the reason why. In 1983, the Greek government, I'm sorry about that, they passed another law, which is known as 1540, 1985, on 10 April 1985, which deals with the return of property seized by the Greek state in the wake of the Greek Civil War for political refugees and internees. Blatantly discriminates against Macedonians and other minorities by limiting the definition of political immigrant to only Greeks by birth, ethnic Greeks. Well, of course, the way we understand this, it's racism. If you start dividing people by their ethnic and denying those rights, that is exactly what it is. And that is a major violation. That is to keep the Macedonians out. Not only those that are involved during that period of time, but even immigrants like ourselves. Anybody like me, for example, coming out and speaking openly, I know I get blacklisted. I am not able to go there. But somebody has to stand up and raise a voice against it. This is an injustice. And that is exactly why I'm here. In 1987, in Aegean Macedonia, just like I mentioned earlier, the Macedonians didn't want to refer to Greek Macedonia or Bulgarian Macedonia. So Aegean Macedonia, when I use that term, means that part of Macedonia, which is part of the Greek territory today. Macedonian parents began to be forced through a carrot and stick approach to send their 2- and 3-year-old children to integrated kindergartens. The goal being to prevent the children from learning the Macedonian language and culture from the early age. This measure was not implemented in any other region of Greece. Decision number 1933-3/1990 of the High Court of Florida, refused registration of the Cultural Association, which I just mentioned earlier, Center, known as Center for Macedonian Culture. An appeal against this decision was refused by the High Court in Florida, and then another appeal at the Appeal Court in Salonika. In June of '91, the Supreme Administrative Council of Greece in Athens dismissed a further appeal, and now it's higher. But obviously you can see the what is really happening. And the reason they're doing this is they're dragging the decisions in the court system. I better elaborate a little bit on this. Because according to the only area where we can really take this to an international court, that is the Human Rights Court, the European Human Rights Court, is you have to exhaust the judicial system of the country, and then you can take your case to them. What the Greek system has done in previous cases is they drag the case, and they can do it up to 5 years, and then they drop the charge. So you can see what is really happening here. At the Copenhagen conference of the CSCE, the conference is divided into two sections. One deals with countries and one deals on the human dimension. That means like groups like ourselves, non-governmental groups, can raise the issues about the violations. In June of 1990, this conference was taking place in Copenhagen, Denmark, and there was a large Macedonian delegation that attended this conference, and I have some slides to show you here. You can see the group. The official Greek delegation formally requested that the executive secretary of the conference, Hausen, order the removal of the Macedonian human rights delegation's literature from the non-governmental organization desk. In other words, they have an area there where we can put our materials, such as this. So other government delegations or other non-governmental individuals would be able to get our information. This attempt, however, failed, causing the Greek delegation severe diplomatic embarrassment. And the reason is because we complained to the Secretariat. We found that one of the top Greek officials went to this counter where we displayed our materials, and he picked up and threw it in the garbage day after day. That to do in a human rights conference is certainly not in the spirit of dialogue and mutual respect. Two Macedonian human rights activists, and these people here were with us in Copenhagen, Christos Sideropoulos and Stavros Anastasiadis, which, by the way, they are mentioned in the Amnesty International report, the latest one of January, who participated in the Copenhagen round of the CHD, that's the Conference on the Human Dimension, were subject to official state harassment and intimidation upon their return to Greece. Sideropoulos was effectively told within 24 hours to be transferred, because he works for the Forestry Department, to Kefalonia. This is an island on the Ionian Sea, close to Italy, hundreds of miles away from where he lives. And not only that, but he was told to leave within 24 hours, no family at all. The other gentleman that was Anastasiadis was also dismissed from his job. And these two individuals today, these are the ones that are being charged and are being, their trial is going to take, the third attempt is going to take place on the 1st of April. First one was set for November 30th. The lawyers were on strike. The second one was set for December 10th. This is the time when the Human Rights Committee got in touch with Amnesty International in London, as well as an organization of lawyers in the United States, and another also a group that deals with against violations of human rights from Vienna. And they sent observers there. But again, it was postponed. But in the meantime, a Greek extremist association attacked their supporters, and 10 people were hurt. 2 of them needed hospitalization. And this was done right in front of the eyes of the Greek police. Not only the Greek police did not do anything, but they even encouraged the attackers to take even harsher action. On July 20, 1990, a Macedonian folkloric festival in the village of Meliti. Anybody that speaks Macedonian, the name of this village is called Charani. In the region of Florina, Leri, was forcibly broken up by local Greek authorities with the assistance of police amid wild scenes and scuffles. The next one is Soviet Greek immigrants and ethnic Greeks from Albania continue to be settled in Macedonia in order to advance the denationalization of the Macedonian minority. And those people, by the way, are settled on our lands, on our properties. And I'll tell you why. Because if you want to reclaim, for example, your property through the court system, for some reason or other, you know that your parents had that property and maybe they passed away because of the political situation in the past, you figure now is the time you can go in through the court system and demand that property. Well, let me tell you, they're not going to allow you to get in, and that's the only way to raise the issue in the courts, if you have a residence in Greece. So how can you really bring it to the court system if you're not allowed to return? So as you can see, it's a systemic and a government policy which is all set against Macedonians. You can see it right there. Such settlements of these groups that are coming from the Soviet Union and Albania complements the model village that I mentioned earlier strategy, where Macedonians from remote and or predominantly Macedonian villages are encouraged to settle in newly built predominantly Greek villages. What really is happening here is they encourage the people to settle in new villages. Why new villages? So they can destroy the old one, so there is no historical monument left. And right at present, by the way, there is also an attempt to even remove the graves from the church of St. George, Sveti Georgi in Florida. And they're going to be reburied somewhere in Yacho. Does anybody know where Yacho is? Okay, that is exactly what is really happening right now. As you know, that the old church, Sveti Limon, was torn down. And another church was built. Why? So they destroyed that monument. And this new church was built according to the Greek style of architecture. This is how it's done, people. This is how it's done. In Bulgaria, as in Greece, the expression of Macedonian ethnicity in Bulgaria has been severely repressed, except for a brief period between 1944 and 48. In all its aspects, in today's post-Zhivkov quasi-democratic Bulgaria, the manifestation of Macedonian consciousness is equated with separatism, anti-Bulgarian, and subversive tendencies. Macedonian history, language, and culture is misappropriated by the Bulgarian state and presented as Bulgarian. This method of appropriation is the chief weapon used for the assimilation of the Macedonian minority. The Macedonian Orthodox Church is not permitted to operate, and the Macedonian language, history, and culture is not taught at any level of the educational system. There is no Macedonian press, TV, or radio programs. During the Živko era, many Macedonians perished in labor concentration camps due to their opposition to the official policy of forced Bulgarization. Macedonians who identify as such openly are still discriminated against in the fields of employment, education, and culture. The processes of democratization in Bulgaria in the wake of the fall of the Stalinist Živkov regime have not led to the recognition of the fundamental rights of the Macedonian minority in Bulgaria. On the contrary, the denial of the Macedonian ethno-specificity has intensified, as can be seen from the following. The Macedonian Human Rights Organization, which I mentioned earlier, Homo Ilinden, and the VMRO Ilinden. The acronyms of this is Obedineta Makedonska Organizacija, which means United Macedonian Organization Ilinden. And the other one, the VMRO, of course, you know what VMRO is. The traditional VMRO, Ilinden Independent, were banned in 1990 after being forced to register as political parties. In September 1990, Homo Ilinden was refused registration as a social organization by the Blagoevgrad Regional Court on the grounds that its activities were anti-constitutional. The statutes of these organizations explicitly renounce secessionist aims and violent methods. In contrast, the Turkish minority has had its rights restored, and its organizations have been registered, as have those of other ethnic groups such as the Armenians and the Gypsies. Why not the Macedonians? You can see that. On 2 August 1990, the first Congress of the Homo Ilinden held in the village of Oštava, and attended by about 100 delegates, was broken up by about 150 well-armed paramilitary police who searched delegates and confiscated all documentation. All members of Ilinden organizational committee were detained and forced to sign statements that had violated the law of public order. Very, very brutal methods were used against these people, because a couple of those people were with us when we attended the following year conference in Moscow. It goes on and on and on. And we can mention a few things also about the Macedonians in Albania. I can talk about the violations, believe me, for hours. And I can be more specific. But like I said, the Macedonian issue, Macedonian question of the violations is very complex. Because we have all these states working against the elimination of that Macedonian ethnicity. Let's not forget that. That's what they're aiming at. The organization of the Macedonians in Albania was recognized for a while, but it was deregistered, because right now they demand that every member to provide his address, his telephone number, and everything else. And of course, anybody knowing the political situation that existed in Bulgaria, say a couple of years ago, for anybody to do that is tantamount to, being persecuted even further. So basically, though, Albania recognizes the Macedonian national minority within its borders. The only thing that their delegations were saying when we met with them, and on a very friendly basis, they said that that they're going through a process of democratization, that everybody is, the system, once it becomes a little bit more democratic, and once the economy improves, that the Macedonians would be able to enjoy more rights than they do at present. We have to wait and see. Now, I would like to show you some more of these slides that I have here, and I hope they would be of some interest to you. But before I finish, I would like to point out that in order for our community to be more successful, just like Mr. Craig mentioned earlier, we have to concentrate on writing, we have to concentrate on Macedonian community at large as to be more involved in this, because we are being insulted practically on a daily basis right here in our lives. And at the same time, we can influence those countries over there by embarrassing them on an international level, by demanding the rights, by demanding, informing our governments to apply pressure to them so the rights of the Macedonians that remain in our homeland are respected. Our committee and the organizations that we're dealing with in Macedonia, that includes all the parts of Macedonia, we're a non-separatist, non-violent organization. We want human rights, equality, to be respected as citizens of those countries, just like Canada respects us here. That is our aim. And that can be achieved by informing our Canadian government to apply pressure on those countries. Because these countries have signed documents and they're not honoring them. They're getting all kinds of financial support from Canada, the States, for example. That should be tied to respect of human rights. It's not worth signing something unless you're prepared to honor it. The Greeks, the Bulgarians are not honoring it. And especially, as you can see, in regards to the recognition of the Republic of Macedonia, Greece has managed to keep the European community, actually in effect, hostage. And that is precisely why it takes so long for the Republic of Macedonia to be internationally recognized. Because everybody is passing the buck and they say, well, once they're recognized by the European community, then we'll recognize them. The fact remains that Macedonia is there. It's not a pie in the sky, it's there, and they have to deal with it. And they need our support, because by supporting them and supporting the recognition, we support ourselves, the Macedonian people, the Macedonian spirit, which is nothing but a spirit that craves for freedom and respect. We demand that respect as we respect others. I will continue with some of the slides. Now, as you can see that the propaganda is carried out here in Canada. Here's the Minister of Foreign Affairs of Greece that came here on a little private chit-chat meeting with the Greek community, and this was, believe me, just prior Mel Lastman Square. Next, please. Publications that come from Greece. They are not official documents, but they're funded by the Greek government, published by private outfits, and believe me, if you read it, your stomach is going to turn, because it's all lies, distortions, and right at the end it says there is no such thing as Macedonians, and that is precisely why that publication is all about. Even sports, as you can see, if you read this brochure that's produced for the referees, it's nothing but propaganda, and the way it's portrayed as if, the Greeks are Macedonians, all of them, including the ones from Crete and from Cyprus and what have you. Now, who in his right mind would say that? And not only that, but an ancient at that. Now, the whole thing is also staged like this. Huge demonstrations in cities in Greece against Macedonia, against the Macedonian people. And they're given the day off free with pay. The schools are closed. Transportation is provided free. That sounds familiar with the totalitarian states. And also they're fanning this extreme nationalist, ultra-nationalist atmosphere, which in the long run, believe me, it's going to be very dangerous for the Greek society itself. Because this kind of climate that they're promoting as a government policy, as an institutional discrimination against other people, it's going to have its negative repercussions in the future. Because what they're doing is they're promoting extreme intolerance. And that extreme intolerance is going to have a negative effect for themselves as well. Also, large sums of money are spent on advertising, ads. This here is a full-page ad in the New York Times, and this is just one of them. They have about 6 or 7 of them. They have them around the world as well. In Pravda, in Zeitung in Frankfurt, large newspaper, in the European, and many other newspapers as well. Next. This particular here is document is what I mentioned about that secret police report. It's a large, it gives detail, and you can even see how they have their agents right here in Canada and spying on our community and blacklisting activists and people that are involved in the community. This is how the records are kept about us, people that live outside. What I mentioned is about our committee was instrumental in sending different delegations to different conferences. In '87, the Macedonian Canadian Human Rights Committee was the first organizations here from Canada, and believe me, we work very closely with the Macedonian community. The Macedonian community supports us very well, and we're thankful. With the organization of the refugee children from Aegean Macedonia, we are very, very close, and they were instrumental in giving us full support, financial support as well, to be able to send that delegation to Strasbourg. Strasbourg is a city in France where the European Parliament sits, where the Council of Europe is located, and the Council of Europe is responsible, by the way, for the European Convention on Human Rights and the court that I just mentioned earlier. So we met with a number of representatives of both those organizations in Strasbourg to acquaint them with the specific violations of these issues. At the same time, part of our delegation went to Geneva to the United Nations Human Rights Commission, and Mr. Sideropoulos was there as well. So you can see why Mr. Sideropoulos is being persecuted. It's not just because he gave an interview to a magazine. This is the building of the European Parliament in Strasbourg. This is another view of it with the symbol of the European flag. That's the assembly. Now over here, I want to show you that we have contacts with people in the old country. The gentleman on the left is one of the leaders of the Homo Elite in Imperial Macedonia in Bulgaria. He visited Canada, and so this is just to show you that we're in contact with these people. Next, please. Now, this is the delegation that attended the Copenhagen CSC conference. As you can see, we were a large delegation there representing different organizations from around the world. The Macedonian Human Rights Committee is only a part of the international group that is known as the Macedonian Human Rights Movement. This includes all our chapters around the world. This is, again, a delegation that attended the CSC conference in Moscow in '91. Now here, we're meeting with representatives of a Turkish delegation at Helsinki last summer. And you can recognize some people there. Of course, there's Chris Pallier speaking, and also the clergyman. He's a Macedonian that came here from the Central Human Rights Committee in Salonika. These are the meeting rooms that our committee actually was responsible to organize all these before the other delegates came. So we set up all the appointments with the representatives of the different countries. And Mary was the one that was responsible to arrange the appointments. So here we are waiting for some of the delegates to come so we can present our case. This is the larger group just outside the conference building in Helsinki. Now, of course, these are the condemnations of the Amnesty International, as Mr. Craig mentioned here tonight. As you can see, that they've been producing quite a few of these things about Greece. Because there is another group as well that is being persecuted, and that is the Turkish, the Muslim minority in Western Thrace. Practically they're faced with the same problems as the Macedonians are, even though the Macedonians are the largest national minority in Greece. But they are not recognized at all, while the minority in Western Thrace, they recognize them only as a Muslim minority, but not as Turks or Pomaks or whatever their nationality is. Only on the religious grounds, which today is wrong, because no country has the right to impose how you identify. And I would like to mention something over this, because we lobbied strongly on this particular issue, the conference in Copenhagen. We knew that the Bulgarians and the Greeks are always saying that, well, of course we respect and we're against the violations of rights of minorities. But we don't have such minorities in Greece. We don't have Macedonians. You know, we don't have those things. So we acquainted practically all the representatives of these countries, including cooperating with other non-governmental organizations, and we pushed pretty hard. And so in the Copenhagen document of the CSC, the final document, this on chapter 4 is included in there, that you are what you want to identify you are. You are a Macedonian, that decision is personal. It's you that make that decision. And no country has the right to deny you that right, or to refuse you, or to demand that you declare yourself something else. There's, to my left, is the Greek article that Mr. Sideropoulos and Mr. Boulis that are charged about the interview they gave, where they're stating that they are Macedonians, that their nationality is Macedonian. They are Greek citizens, yes, but their nationality, I repeat that, is Macedonian. And that's why they're charged. The other article published in The Spectator, this is a British magazine, similar to Time. And it's a very, very strong article where, again, Mr. Sideropoulos and Boulis and the movement of Macedonians in Greece is mentioned. And the charges came immediately after that second article was published. Actually, they didn't charge him right after the Greek publication, but they did charge him after the English publication. So maybe that will tell you some story there. Next one. Now here, about land distribution in Greece and how the systemic discrimination against Macedonians. We have these documents in there, an application by a Macedonian to get a grant of land. The application was made in 1953. The reply came a little bit later, and it says that he must pay whatever charges for the process and everything else. And the third one, when do you think they replied to him? In 1992, from 1953, telling them that there's no land available. At the same time, Greeks that are come from the Soviet Union and Albania are given land grants. Again, what land? Whose land? Our land. So you can see how it's done. When they're not going to give him a grant, this man, and they don't invest in areas where Macedonians live, so there's no factories. What happens to the Macedonians? They're forced to immigrate. They're forced to live, or they're forced to go somewhere else in Greece where they cannot survive. What I mean is they cannot survive with their national identity, or they're forced to assimilate. That's the reason why. These two documents that you just saw earlier is what we produced. They are reports after the, like this one here, for example, giving information about the activities at these conferences. A number of publications came out after we started bringing the issue to the highest level, because that's the only place to raise the issue. At the highest level of these conferences where decisions are made, in order to bring mechanisms to force these people to lay down in these accords so we can pursue this further. This is a slow process, but it's the only way to go about it. So as you can see here, a very respected human rights organizations, Helsinki Watch, published this about the Macedonians in Bulgaria. And you can see that violations was a policy of the government. It's a large article. It's a large publication. Next. And over here, as you can see, we were denied, the Macedonian community in Cambridge was denied the right to raise the Macedonian flag. After they were given a permit, it was rescinded, and the Macedonians protested around the Cambridge City Hall. And the reason the politicians, the council in Cambridge, canceled the permit was because they were all threatened by telephone, their children. They threatened their children at the schools, their wives, with physical violence. And this is how pressure is applied, by creating a climate of anarchy. And you saw it here at Mount Lassman Square. That is exactly how it's applied. So they forced the authorities to take action because the situation has gone out of hand. That is part and parcel of the whole system of applying pressure. Pressure and denying our rights. And that, can you imagine, if this is happening here in Canada, what is it like to be a Macedonian in Greece? I'd ask you that question. Next.
Yeah,
That's it. All right. There's a lot more things to say. I had more slides, actually overhead slides, different things. But I believe it's time for me to finish. And I would like to leave you with a thought that I, as an individual, and the members of the Macedonian Human Rights Committee, and all those people that I know personally that I met
what they have to go through over there. We're highly committed, and we want to see those rights our people to enjoy, just like civilized people. I ask you to do whatever is possible, whatever you can do, to give them a helping hand. We have to give each other a helping hand, and that is my message. Thank you very much.
Thank you. If you could remain in your seats, can I have your attention? I have given you misinformation. Trian Dimitriou became president of the Human Rights Association in 1990-91. Mary Dimitriou is the managing director. I think she's in the back there somewhere. But Mr. Bill Pancharovsky was the first president of the Macedonian Canadian Human Rights. I think he's here, I'm not sure. He could stand. And now, okay, 5 minutes for question period. If you'd like to direct them to either Mr. Michael Craig or Trian, one at a time. Okay. I think that you had one from a long time ago. Okay.
This is Mr. Craig. You're talking, sir, about human rights, how they look after, how whatever you do here. I failed to see them done. Okay? First of all, I have to go to Greece. I can see a Dimitriou Toronto. I'm here 45 years. I'm a direct teacher and assistant police officer who is teaching kids to become citizens of Canada and to protect Canada. But my rights are not protected. Why? For the Greeks is given the right to put the whole document in Greek. For me, it's not given even to put the flag in Greek. In the top of it, I'm sorry, in the top of it, we're talking about human rights. Macedonia was divided by the English and French, and today they try to destroy again. Where are you people? What are you doing here?
Respond
Thank you.
to what is, I suppose, more of a perspective than a question. Where Amnesty International is at is assembling, very carefully assembling information on human rights abuses against Macedonians in Greece and elsewhere, and acting on them, as I have described and as the documents describe that I have referred to. Amnesty is doing its best to bring these human rights abuses to light and to force the Greek government and others to correct them and to cease such human rights abuses. As far as the situation in Canada is concerned, that's a little trickier for Amnesty. I think probably the best recourse is to the Canadian police and the Canadian courts in order to ensure that you have the right to speak out on the Danforth and elsewhere.
we only have 5 minutes. Is there one more question? Okay, I don't know. Fellow, sorry. You go ahead.
I guess I'm not that welcome here. I'm a person whose parents are Greeks and they're born in Macedonia. I guess I have a question for Mr. Dimitriou.
Turn it louder, please, so we can hear you. You have to start all over again.
Okay, I was saying that my parents were Greek and they were born in Macedonia. And I have a question for Mr. Dimitriou. I don't adopt or intend to justify, and I agree with a lot of these statements about Greek violations of the Slavic speaking people who speak the Slavic language in Macedonia. I do think, though, there's a misleading, a lot of historically misleading information coming out. And what I object to, and what I agree with the Greek position, is that, what people who identify as Macedonian are basically people who speak the Macedonian language, which is a Slavic language. But there are people. I don't think there is anyone who identifies himself as Macedonian in the sense that you identify yourself as Macedonian, who is not part of the Slavic community. I mean, there's, let's say, 100 years ago in the Greek, what is now Greek Macedonia, there were Turks, there were Jews, there were Greeks. I mean, there were 250,000 Greeks, and there were Slavic speakers.
Ask the question.
Okay, the last question.
We don't want to
He's leading up to it.
There's other questions.
What the Greeks suggested.
You ask the question, you're not at the floor. Ask the question, don't talk to us. Ask the question.
Just so they can hear.
I'm sorry, you gotta ask the question.
Okay. What I'm saying is that what the Greeks suggested is the implication that the people who don't identify themselves as Macedonian really don't belong there. That the Greeks that are there, Albanians are there, whoever else is there, the Jews that used to be there, the Turks who are there, really are not, it's not their homeland. The homeland is basically for only the people who identify themselves as Macedonians, who are basically the Slavic-speaking part of Macedonia.
First of all, I can see that the Greek propaganda has infiltrated even you, because you refer to us as Slavic. We refer to ourselves as Macedonian. Slavic. Is done in the Greek educational system. That's right. They raise their children by the fact that they don't listen to what we have to say as Macedonians. We call ourselves Macedonians. We don't call ourselves anything else. Those terms are given by the Greek government, official circles. And another thing, in Macedonia there are Greeks that live in Macedonia. We know that there are Greeks living in Macedonia. But that is not to say they're ethnic Macedonian. They are Greeks. There is Greeks and there is Macedonians. There are two different separate ethno-cultural groups. Let's get that straight. One more thing. In 1913, in 1913, that's when, for the first time, the modern state of Greece took possession of a part of Macedonia. Greece has never had control of all the territory of historic or the homeland of the Macedonian people.
Greeks never existed until the 19th century. Greece only existed in the 19th century, but before there were various governments.
Shut up, you're
He's asking a question. Why?
I object to the implication that people who are not Slavic, who are Greek there, I mean the Greeks who are there have been there for thousands of years do not call themselves Macedonians, they call themselves Greek. And you're implying that either
No, that's the Greek propaganda. We're not saying that. We demand the rights as Macedonians within the territory in Greece. Our rights to be respected. Our culture has to be developed. We are Macedonians and the others are Greeks. The Greeks have their associations, they have their rights, they have their schools. We don't. If that is the case, if we were Greeks, why would be demanding those things to be respected? Why were we not allowed to have the schools in Macedonia in Greece? Why were we prevented to have our cultural associations in Greece? Why? Why are we prevented to return to our homelands? Why? Why are they calling us Bulgarians? They're calling us